The mornings in San Francisco always had this chilly fog, like a curtain over the city. I used to think it was comforting in a way, like a shield from the chaos outside. That day, I stood by my office window, staring at the city waking up. My name's Adam Harris, founder and CEO of Cortec, a company I built from the ground up. From this view, I could see everything I worked for: towering skyscrapers, shiny glass buildings, all symbols of success. But I'd never felt so uncertain. My family, my whole world, was supposed to be part of that success. Cynthia, my wife, and our 3 kids, Hannah, Jake, and Ethan, were my pride. Hannah and Jake worked alongside me in the business, helping it grow. Ethan, well, he was doing his own thing as a doctor. I figured he was carving out his own path, and I respected that. I thought we were a tight-knit group, supporting each other, always. But lately, something had felt off, like the ground beneath me wasn't as solid as I'd believed. That morning, Cynthia had arranged a family breakfast at Lupa Jardin, one of those fancy spots she loved. It was our little tradition to celebrate big milestones, and this time it was about taking Cortec public. An IPO, the big league. It was the culmination of years of work, and it was supposed to mean security for everyone. Our family, our future. The restaurant was beautiful, with its lush greenery and quiet charm. Cynthia had outdone herself, as always. She greeted me with that perfect smile of hers, and for a moment, I let myself believe everything was fine. Hannah and Jake are already here, she said, motioning toward a table set up just for us. When I joined them, the atmosphere felt staged. Hannah and Jake were their usual selves, chatting about upcoming projects, but something about their enthusiasm felt rehearsed. Ethan arrived a little later, apologizing for being held up at the hospital. We all sat down to eat, and for a while, I let myself relax. I talked about the company, shared stories about the early days, and listened to their laughter. Even Ethan, who usually stayed quiet during business talk, chimed in. But then, Cynthia leaned over and said, "Adam, you've done so much for us. This IPO is your masterpiece." Her words sounded like praise, but there was something in her tone, something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't warmth or pride. It was calculated. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Something about that breakfast kept nagging at me. Cynthia's smile, her tone, the way everyone seemed so coordinated. It wasn't like them. I got up and walked to my home office, a space that had always felt like my sanctuary. As I sat down, I opened my laptop to review some documents. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just a distraction, maybe. But then I saw it. A notification popped up, a message thread linked to the family's group chat. It wasn't unusual for us to message each other, but this one had a strange title, Next Steps. I clicked on it, and what I found made my blood run cold. The messages were from Cynthia, Hannah, Jake, and even Ethan. They weren't talking about family plans or upcoming events. No, they were discussing me. Once the IPO goes through, we'll have full control, Cynthia had written. Dad won't see it coming, Jake had added, with a laughing emoji. Hannah and Ethan had chimed in too, strategizing about how to handle my shares and ensure I'd have no say in the company anymore. My hands shook as I read each line. My family, the people I'd built everything for, were planning to push me out, betray me. I sat there for what felt like hours, rereading their words, trying to make sense of it. My mind kept going back to moments I'd ignored. Cynthia's carefully chosen words, Hannah and Jake's sudden interest in the IPO details, even Ethan's decision to stay out of the company. Had it all been part of some larger plan? I thought about confronting them right away, but something stopped me. If they'd gone this far to plot against me, they wouldn't back down easily. No, I needed to be smart. The first thing I did was secure my accounts. I'd built Cortec on technology, and if there was one thing I knew better than anyone, it was how to protect data. I encrypted my files, locked down access, and started digging into the company's records. If they were working together, there had to be a trail, emails, contracts, something. And then there was David Cooper. He was my oldest friend and CFO of Cortec. If anyone knew about this, it would be him. I decided to call him the next day, but even as I planned it, doubt crept in. Could I trust him? The betrayal hit harder than anything I'd ever faced. It wasn't just about the company or the money. It was about my family, the people I'd trusted with my life. As I stared out at the city again, the fog seemed thicker, darker. I wasn't sure what my next move would be, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going down without a fight. Sophia's foundation lawyers drew up emergency transfer documents by sunset. Adam had set in motion a plan that would either save his life or destroy everything he'd built. The irony wasn't lost on him. His family planned to use the IPO to kill him, but he would use it to save himself. Roman Mason considered himself a professional, which was why he'd been watching Harris Technologies' parking garage for 3 days straight. He needed to know Adam's routine. When he arrived, which entrance he used, where the security cameras faced. The fact that his client was Adam's wife just made the job more interesting. What Roman didn't notice was the black SUV parked 2 blocks away, where Brian Lee's security team photographed his every move. He didn't see the 3 unmarked police cars that had been strategically positioned around the building. Professional as he was, Roman had gotten sloppy. After years of successful accidents inside Harris Technologies, Cynthia slipped into David Cooper's office. Her designer heels silent on the carpet, she whispered, "Everything's ready for tomorrow." Adam suspects nothing. David looked up from his computer. His wire-rimmed glasses reflected lines of code. "Are you sure about this, Cynthia? Once we start, there's no going back. 20 years of playing the perfect wife while he built his empire on our backs. You've seen how he treats the kids, like they're just extensions of his legacy," she replied. David sighed. "They're still so young to carry this weight. They're stronger than you think. Alicia's been running Europe better than Adam ever could. Jake's doubled our Asian market share. Even Ethan," she paused. "Even Ethan understands what needs to be done." Neither of them noticed the tiny red light blinking in the office's smoke detector. It was a new installation that connected directly to the secure server room where Adam watched their conversation unfold on multiple screens. Natalie worked beside him, her fingers dancing across keyboards. Ghost Protocol implementation at 87%. All family account shadows are in place. Transfer pathways are prepared, she reported. Adam watched his wife and best friend plot his murder with the same efficiency they once used to plan company expansions. "Show me the trust structure again," he ordered. A complex diagram appeared on the main screen, a labyrinth of digital pathways that would activate the moment Adam entered a single command. Every account, every share transfer, every plan to move power would become a mirage, while the real control shifted elsewhere. "It's beautiful," Natalie murmured, admiring the elegance of their solution. "They'll think they have everything until the moment they don't." Adam's phone buzzed with a message from Brian Lee. "Mason's on the move." Another screen showed Roman Mason's black sedan pulling away from its surveillance spot. "Stay on him. I want to know everywhere he goes," Adam said, his voice calm but firm. The afternoon crawled by with a series of meetings where Adam played his part perfectly. He reviewed IPO documents with David, discussed charity plans with Cynthia, and held video calls with his children about their division's latest achievements. Each interaction felt like a scene from a play, where only he knew the true script. He caught the subtle signs, Alicia's nervous glances when the IPO timing was mentioned, Jake's forced laughter during strategy discussions, Ethan's sudden interest in company governance. The most painful moment came during his weekly one-on-one with Cynthia. She perched on the edge of his desk, just like she had countless times before, her hand resting on his arm as she asked about the final IPO details. "Everything's proceeding exactly as planned," she said, and Adam heard the double meaning in her words. "Yes," he agreed, covering her hand with his. "Everything is proceeding exactly as planned." The most painful part was that, even now, he still loved them. Adam stood in his home office, adjusting his tie in the mirror. The sun was setting over San Francisco Bay, painting his Pacific Heights mansion in shades of gold and shadow. In 30 minutes, his family would arrive for what they thought would be a pre-IPO celebration. What they didn't know was that this dinner would be their last performance as a united family. "The table is set," Mr. Harris, Maria, their housekeeper, announced from the doorway. "Mrs. Harris's favorite china, just as you requested." Adam nodded, thinking of how many family dinners had been served on those plates. How many celebrations? How many lies? "Thank you, Maria. You can take the rest of the night off." I'll handle the serving. Maria must have heard something in his voice because she hesitated before quietly closing the door behind her. The security feed on his tablet showed Alicia and Hugh arriving first, followed closely by Jake and Crystal. Ethan came alone. David arrived last. Always the faithful family friend. Always the careful conspirator. Cynthia emerged from the kitchen in a black dress that probably cost more than their first house. Darling, everyone's here. Shall we? Adam offered his arm, playing his role one last time. They entered the dining room to find their family arranged around the massive mahogany table. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier above. Before they began, Adam raised his glass, scanning the faces he'd known and loved for so long. I'd like to propose a toast, he said. Everyone lifted their glasses, their expressions eagerly anticipatory. They thought they knew what was coming. Standard pre-IPO excitement, perhaps some fatherly wisdom. To family, Adam said, watching their faces carefully. To family, they echoed. Loyalty. Was that a flinch from Ethan? A flicker of guilt across his youngest son's face? To truth, Adam added. Cynthia's smile never wavered, practiced as any actress. But Adam saw David's hand tighten around his wine stem. Then he said the words that made David's fork freeze halfway to his mouth. To Roman Mason. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the city beyond their windows seemed to hold its breath. Who? Cynthia asked, her voice steady, but her knuckles white around her wine glass. Adam set his glass down with deliberate care. Your trainer? Or should I say, your specialist in making problems disappear? He turned to face his wife fully. He's being arrested right now, by the way. 20 years of cold cases suddenly got warm. The room erupted into chaos. Cynthia's carefully maintained composure cracked like fine china. You're lying, she hissed, but her eyes darted to her phone. Am I? Adam pressed a button on his phone. The dining room's hidden speakers came to life with a recording of Cynthia's voice. Everything's arranged. Once Adam signs the IPO next week, Roman will handle the rest. A carjacking gone wrong in the financial district. Clean, quick, untraceable. Stop it, Alicia whispered, her face pale. But Adam wasn't finished. Another button press, another recording. This time, David's voice. The offshore accounts are ready. Once it's done, everything transfers automatically. I trusted you, Adam said quietly. All of you. I gave you everything. Opportunities, education, power. And this is how you repay me? With murder plots and betrayal? Cynthia opened her mouth to speak, but Adam cut her off. 20 years, Cynthia. 20 years of planning my death while sharing my bed. Tell me, when did you start hating me enough to want me dead? Hate you. Cynthia laughed, a brittle sound. I stopped loving you 15 years ago. When you missed our 20th anniversary to close a deal in Singapore. When you forgot Ethan's high school graduation because of a board meeting. When you turned our children into extensions of your empire instead of letting them be themselves. Is that true? Adam turned to his children. Is that how you feel? Jake wouldn't meet his eyes. Alicia stared at her plate. Only Ethan looked up, tears streaming down his face. They pushed me into medicine, he whispered. Said it would make me look less suspicious when they killed me, Adam finished. The quiet hum of the plane's engines was almost a comfort, a constant in the wake of everything that had shattered my life. I glanced out the window, watching the fog roll out over San Francisco, the city that had been my empire, my legacy. Now, it felt distant, like a dream I had long since awoken from. Lily sat across from me, her eyes fixed on the screen of the tablet she had in her hands. She had become a constant in my life these past few years, always steady, always there when I needed her. Sophia says everything is in place, she said softly, not looking up from her tablet. Everything, I repeated, but the weight of the word pressed on me. The foundation board was set, the children's educational programs were being funded, and yet none of it felt real. My hands, once accustomed to the power of running a tech giant, now felt like they were grasping at something far out of reach. The plea deals, I said, remembering the long negotiations, the backroom deals that had kept my family out of prison, but not free from the shame. Cynthia and David would serve time, but I couldn't shake the guilt. Hannah, Jake, and Ethan, the youngest of my children, were getting second chances, but it didn't make things right. The buzz of my phone broke through my thoughts. A message from Ethan. Dad, I'm sorry. When I'm better, when I've earned it, can I come see you? I stared at the screen for a long time, the words barely registering. I didn't know what to say. Ethan had been through hell, and now he was trying to make a life for himself. I should have been there for him, should have seen the signs, should have stopped everything before it reached this point. I began typing, my fingers trembling slightly as I wrote, always. Do you miss it? Lily asked, her voice gentle, knowing the question I hadn't dared to ask myself. I didn't answer right away. How could I? The empire I had built, the life I had lived, it was gone. But there were no easy answers anymore, no escaping the truth of what had happened. What had we all done? I miss who I was before it all fell apart, I said quietly. But not the man who let it get this far. Lily nodded, understanding in the way she always did. But you've built something new, Adam. The foundation, the kids who are getting the scholarships. That's something. You're making a difference now. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that the work I was doing, the legacy I was trying to leave behind, was enough to make up for the years I had spent living in the shadow of greed and power. But it wasn't. It wasn't enough to make me forget the guilt of not seeing the cracks in my family, the betrayals from the people I had trusted the most. Not enough to erase the image of David Cooper, Oliver Keller, a man I had once trusted, working behind the scenes to bring everything to its knees. Lily, I said, my voice tight, I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself for what happened to my family. She reached across the table and took my hand, her grip firm. You don't have to forgive yourself right now, Adam. Maybe you never will, but you're trying. And that counts for something. I looked out the window again, my gaze resting on the horizon where the sun was beginning to dip below the clouds. The island was close. In a few hours, we'd be there, far from the world that had betrayed me, far from the past I couldn't escape. The jet banked left, the water below reflecting the fading sunlight. The world felt different here, untouched, peaceful. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the place where I could find some peace too. The engine's hum lulled me into a quiet reflection, and for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to close my eyes.